I'm Jennifer Hennigan. I'm the Deputy Research Director for the American Planning Association and also manager of the Green Communities Center for Research. With me here is Jack Becker of Forecast Public Art, who we're very proud to partner with on a very exciting new project. Jack, can you talk a little about the project in general?
Sure. Jennifer and I have been talking about this project for a while. I'm very excited because I work with Forecast Public Art. It's a 40-year-old organization, a nonprofit based in the Twin Cities. And we've been publishing Public Art Review for almost 30 years and supporting artist projects in communities around Minnesota. And for the last 20 years or so, we've been doing consulting work for communities and cities in particular, and finding ourselves in rooms with city planners who may or may not know that much about public art and placemaking. And we find ourselves in an interesting position where we have all this information at our fingertips about artists, stories about projects, best practices. And so a couple of years ago, we applied to the National Endowment for the Arts under their Our Town program to partner with the American Planning Association with the idea of knowledge sharing and converting and translating some of our wealth of content about the public art field into a learning tool for city planners so that they can start accessing the kind of information they need, kind of information they want to use in their day-to-day jobs. And particularly for cities that are the smaller or mid-sized cities, not the really big metropolises where they typically have public art programs, they have staff, they have access to expertise and resources. And then as we were developing this partnership idea, one thought was, how could we filter this idea of public art and placemaking through the lens of planners wanting to create healthier cities? And what does that mean, and how can public art be used to improve the health of cities, from the health of citizens, their physical health, economic health, environmental health, a number of those factors which we know for a fact a lot of planners really care about.
Definitely, definitely. So, we're basically taking this vast repository of knowledge you have about public art and placemaking and putting it into a format that planners can use, people who may be interested in the idea of public art and placemaking, but just don't really know where to start or how to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a 101 to get started, but then there could be future modules that are very sophisticated for people who've been there and done that. Now they want to know about this, like contracts and commissioning artists, or governance systems, and how to pitch your public art ordinance to the city council, and what are the benefits of public art. This is often a lot of the questions I get asked from cities, especially the planners, who I have to say, I mean, we wanted to partner with APA because planners are, I think, special people within cities. I see them as the fulcrum connectors and resource people for a lot of the other sectors within a city. So from the leadership to the people in public works and engineering, to people who are doing community development and housing, environmental work, the planners like at the core of it. And if we can work with planners and their allied professions, our goal is that as artists are becoming more sophisticated and working in communities, they're not going to run up against a closed door or an unwelcome sign when they get to City Hall and say, who can help me do this great project in your city?
That's great. I like the ideas of planners occupying this special place within the city, and I think that's very true that you have, planners are there at the intersection dealing with the big policy issues, but they're also talking to the public every single day in what they do. So they do have kind of a special opportunity and ways to engage people that other departments may not.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I actually spent 2.5 years working for the city of St. Paul in their planning and economic development department. I was a project director there. I was called the arts development manager for the city of St. Paul. And as an artist being in the planning department for a city, I soon figured out that bureaucracy is an art form too. And in some ways, it's kind of like found object sculpture. You have all this raw material in the city around you, from the people, the places, the industries, and it's a matter of making these connections and putting things together. So like found object sculpture, from many diverse and disparate elements, you can make something happen. And the planner's in the middle of that, where they can connect this person to this person and see something new emerge from that. It's a creative act.
Okay, well, can you give us a little preview of what we'll get at the end of our project? How can public arts accomplish these goals in planning?
That's a great question. We've been publishing Public Art Review for a long time, so we have a lot of thematic back issues of the magazine. So we've done issues on sound and light and murals, of course, things that maybe are more traditional, or memorials. But we've also done issues about planning public art and art that's about community engagement and artists as leaders in communities and connectors. So we have a lot of this great content, but one of the things we didn't know, and one of the questions that was posed to us while we were thinking about this particular project is, how do planners like to learn? And I didn't know the answer to that, and so we decided we needed to do a survey. So we've actually put an online survey out there. We've gotten over 200 responses now, asking some basic questions like, how do you like to learn, and what's your favorite learning tools, and what form is it in? Is it digital? Is it something you hold in your hand? Is it a poster you put on the wall? Is it a workshop you go to? Is it one-on-one? And we're going to collect all that and try and come up with the answer to, well, what form should this learning tool take, number one, and what kinds of information also do people want? So the kinds of surveying we've been doing more recently on top of that are asking planners, like on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you consider your knowledge about the public art field to be? And if it's 1 or 2, we know you need some really basic information, and if it's 7 or 8, you're at the higher end and you want more nuanced information. And then the other part of that survey is, what are the top 3 things you want to learn about public art and placemaking? So we're using this information to inform what will be a curriculum consultant and some advisors and task force members who have great skills from these various layers around the professional development for city planners and curriculum development and education for city planners, to look at whatever draft materials get translated from the content we have into this form and create a beta version. And so this is in 2017. By the end of this year, we'll have the beta version of this learning tool ready to share. And then, since we're based in Minnesota, we picked 5 cities in southern Minnesota as a cohort of guinea pigs who are willing to road test the beta version in early 2018, so that by the end of 2018, we'll have gotten their feedback and done the refinements to this learning tool. And by 2019, we hope to have it on the market. So whatever that means, and as a beginning stage, like I said, so it might have future iterations or modules that grow and expand. And we're hoping that as the American Planning Association starts thinking more broadly about the kinds of educational resources that they recognize are needed in the field that maybe aren't available yet, we want to fit into that sweet spot of, that's a tool that everybody wants and it's really marketable and people want to tell their friends. Or one of my fantasies is, after you take this class, you get a poster to put on your wall, whatever, and it's a really cool poster and it's a certificate that you went through the program. But it gets people who come into your cubicle or your office to go, well, what's that on your wall? And then they want you to tell them about it, and it becomes a point of pride and sharing, and then you want to take that too, or hopefully.
I love the idea of a certificate that's not your standard, certificate of attendance with somebody's signature on it.
No, it's got to have cool public art on it,
Of
right?
course,
and
of course.
some kind of graphic elements that make it really interesting and exciting. Because this field of public art is about infusing creativity into some really basic and functional things that happen at the city level.
That's a really important point, because I think one of the big obstacles for planners to incorporate public art and the arts in general into their work is sort of a general sense of intimidation. The art with a capital A, that if you don't have a Picasso involved in your project, it's not art, and so what does it even matter? But that's not what we're talking about at all.
Not at all. In fact, we've recognized that there's the top-down version of public art, where cities that have percent for art ordinances or corporations that have money and want artists to create art for their plazas. There's this kind of top-down scenario where we're looking to hire an artist to create an artwork for our space, right? Then there's the bottom-up public art, where all this grassroots efforts happening in communities, whether you know about them or not. Mostly they're not recognized because they're not getting the publicity, or there isn't much money or any money involved. And you actually find out there's a ton of creativity and people who are doing creative work. They don't even necessarily think of themselves as artists. In almost any neighborhood you could point to, anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, and that it's a matter of, you know, kind of surfacing that and celebrating that and welcoming that in the community. So how can a top-down approach help nurture a bottom-up approach, and how do they meet, you know, and work together? Because in my experience, most successful public art programs are a public-private partnership, not just what the city wants to do with public art, or just what the artists want to do, but somehow a coming together and finding that there actually is a common ground between the two. And also a lot of the percent for art programs we have in this country right now, and there's some 350 of them, where they take a percent of, say, the city's capital budget and apply that to commissioning art for that particular capital project. It really ends up just being a bunch of bricks and mortar public art projects they have long-term care and liability for. And some cities don't even have the money to take care of the public art in their collections. That what's happening now is a lot of cities are trying to figure out, how do we broaden the kind of public art program we want so it's inclusive of temporary projects and festivals and artists doing community engaged work in neighborhoods, or doing environmental remediation projects with wetlands, or you know, waste management and recycling. And I mean, artists are scroungers. They'll take all the stuff in your public art yards, you know, that you've got, and they'll turn them into amazing sculptures if you let them. So it's all about kind of broadening people's awareness first of what are the possibilities in this public art field, and then helping increase understanding. Like, what is the story behind how that artist created that project in this community? So I can start to learn the backstories and the why and the what and the who, and what difference did it make. And I think after we increase the awareness and understanding, we can get a little more appreciation among these allied professions around the public art and placemaking world. And that can lead to more support, which really is the ultimate goal, because artists can be infused at almost every level of the kind of work that's being done in a city, no matter what size the city is.
That's great. And it's so great that this tool that we're developing, it's not just for, you know, cities like New York and LA who've got hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars to spend on public art, but you can create a meaningful project that has a lot of impact for community, and you don't need to have that huge budget behind you.
Right.
And it can take a number of forms.
And in fact, this is why the public-private partnership aspect is so important. For example, in Winona, Minnesota, small town, they really have done a lot to invest in art, and they have galleries and performances and things like that. And public art's kind of new to them. Well, it just so happens there's a metal fabricator that makes park benches in Winona. They, you know, do metal fabrication. Well, they're really excited about this idea because they want artists to come in and show them ways they can customize their park benches to be, you know, cut for each city, more authentic. And could they create a portfolio of projects in Winona that then they can help to market their, you know, park benches?
That is an excellent example of a public-private partnership.
You know, there's also artists who are actually in residence at cities that are helping them do planning, because they'll do pop-up events in communities to get input from people who would never go to, you know, a community meeting to talk about a street closure or a new development. And so the artists are willing to do things that planners might not normally think is part of their job, but it actually does support the work that the planner's trying to get. Like, what does the community think of this? And if I only have the 3 people who show up at a community meeting, I really don't know what the whole community thinks.
Being able to use the arts to expand the ways that we think about how we do planning, that's very valuable, because it's so easy to get into that rut of following your public procedure and not deviating for things, but you can follow that procedure and be creative and engage people and come up with a much better product.
In fact, you need to be creative and innovative in that. I was at the Minnesota APA conference last year, and a large number of the sessions that people wanted were about community-engaged design and planning processes. And they were working with theater artists, and they were working with musicians and dancers, and in ways that just loosened up people's thinking and willingness to open up about what was going on in their community and be candid about it. Whereas a lot of people show up at a public meeting and it's intimidating to get in front of a group of people at a microphone and speak your mind and be truthful about it, what's really going on.
Right.
And right now, we're dealing with some really tough issues in our communities, issues that some people don't want to talk about, or they want to be anonymous. And so there are also artists thinking of cool and innovative online and digital ways for people to be honest about what's going on. I think of artists like Candy Chang, who developed Neighborland, and it's this cool online system for people to say what they want in their neighborhood, and for somebody else to see it and go, me too, and then if enough people all like that one idea, well, it's probably a sign that that thing is going to move forward, and that group of people is going to work on that.
It's
It's
great way to
wonderful,
generate
right?
that dialogue around something that people may not just off the cuff want to talk about. But building that collaborations and lifting up people's voices so that they can come together and unite around something. It's really amazing outcome.
Yeah, and so for the planner, in some ways, it's a huge advantage to take artists in your community and give them support to do what artists do already, but put it at the service of what you need to do your job as a planner. And if we can kind of get to that sweet spot, we can't imagine that the planners wouldn't want to work with artists, and vice versa. Artists often don't recognize what's going on inside City Hall. I was lucky as an artist myself to have this job at the City of St. Paul and find out what is it like to be in City Hall and work in that environment, and what kind of language do planners speak, and what do project managers do? And how do they learn negotiating skills and assertiveness training, and what is the kinds of basic information they need? And then what could possibly be like the frosting on the cake? What's going to really make this job enjoyable for me? Because I know planners, they're overworked, they're stressed out, they have way too many things on their plate, and if there's one thing that could come along and make their job easier and help them accomplish the goals they wanted to accomplish anyway, and have fun with it, it's like, okay, I'm signing up.
Right. But that's great. I mean, thanks so much, Jack, for sitting down with me and talking about this. It's really exciting, and I can't wait to really get into coming up with this curriculum and ground testing it in these 5 Minnesota communities.
It's going to be fun, and I can't wait to share with you what these cities come up with and how it will then be used when we want to share it, hopefully by 2019, with all the APA members.
Only 2 years, but it'll be great. Thanks, Jack.
Thanks, Jennifer.